Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang. Now, China released official statistics about its wealth gap on Friday for the first time since 2005. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, China's Gini coefficient, which measures income distribution, was 0.474 in 2012. Now, if those numbers are accurate, that means that China's wealth gap is only slightly higher than the U.S.'s wealth gap. But are the numbers accurate? And why has China not released those numbers for 8 years? Here today to talk about that, we have Chen Zhifei and Jason Ma. So let's start talking about, just off with what the Gini coefficient is. So it's a scale from 0 to 1, and 0 means...
0 means that it's purely egalitarian society. And if it reaches level of 1, it means it's all over the place. It's most lopsided in the income distribution. You look at how it is captured, how it's computed. It's based on the Lorentz curve. Basically, it's a wealth distribution frequency table for a certain percentage of population, how much the wealth they occupy from society. So if you do this for each category of income or population group, you will get a frequency table, which is nonlinear. And the nonlinear curve would form an
easy
area.
to understand.
Well, that's right. It's a pretty complicated economic kind of
thing. You have to calculate, you use an integral, the area between the curve and the 45-degree line, which is the perfect distribution of wealth. And the larger the area, the higher the income misallocation or imbalances.
So
and China is it's getting closer to 1. That means it's a signal which is yelling dangerous.
Okay, let me give you, I have a few numbers here for different countries. Like Sweden's Gini coefficient is 0.25, so that's pretty good, right?
That was China, what China was like 30 years ago when we were born.
Right. Really?
Everybody was poor.
Okay, everybody was poor, so okay, it's more equally poor. So South Africa is 0.63, so that's pretty high.
Right.
Now, so the U.S. has 0.467, and that's only slightly lower than 0.474, which is what the National Bureau of Statistics says.
Don't tell that to those people who are occupying Wall Street, because they don't like it.
Generally speaking, I think in a different country, due to culture, they have different reaction to the numbers. But overall, people believe anything below 0.4 probably is the ideal society. Above 0.4 is something you to work on.
So 0.4 is kind of like a lot of people mention that it's a number where
that's a threshold number that if you go beyond that, you have to watch out. If you dip below it, you're fine. You don't need to worry about it. And note that it's really interesting. As we know, actually, this is the first time China publicized Gini coefficient since 2001. So in other words, in the last 12 years, this is the first time we heard anything about Gini coefficient from the Chinese government.
Version.
I thought they had something in 2005 that wasn't official when they...
None of it is official.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and but at the end of last year, they do have a research organization in a university called
Southwestern University of Finance and Economics.
Right, and that gave a number. They said Chinese Gini index is about 0.61, which is about the same level as South Africa, which put China into the highest kind of uneven
That's
country.
Quite a difference between 0.474 and 0.61.
Well, if you don't believe this one universal research, then you can check out the research done by China's internal think tank, which is affiliated to China's State Council. They have a research institute. They did a research that is only circulated within the top echelon, which found that China's Gini coefficient passed the dangerous line 0.6 5 years back. That's probably the most serious we have seen so far. And there was also one independent study done by an economist based in the U.S. at Texas A&M University. Professor Gan Li did a study in Chinese coefficient. It's very recent. He found the coefficient is 0.6. So all the results point 0.6 when you have some kind of established methodology to back it up. But this new number came from nowhere, and it's very close to the number they published last time in 2001. In other words, the government is trying to convince people in the last 12 years, even though we had a go-go economy, even though we joined WTO, even though we saw so much that have happened in China that really made people think about income misdistribution, the level of Gini coefficient stay the same.
Well, like they're saying, they actually say that it's actually lowered.
Right, they said
years.
2008 they peaked, and then from there on, in the past 4 years, they constantly go down, which is to make everyone begin to laugh on this number. It's just kind of I think some journalists were trying to get a comment from some Chinese economics, like Xu Xiaonian, the guy just saying like, you ask me to give you a serious comment on this fake number, I'm sick or not?
Well, let me ask. So the National Bureau of Statistics, they're saying, well, one of the reasons we haven't published in so long is it's hard to determine, how much wealthy people actually own. They're saying that's like the problem.
Well, in a country where every cell phone holder would have their number closely watched, their IP address closely monitored, for such a government making such a claim, I think it's just mind-boggling. Right. Of course, they have all the resources. They have so many people devoted to security, public security, and watch over people's behavior. I guess get the wealth data, get income data is very easy. And also, since 2005, China has instituted pretty sophisticated tax collection system, and tax is based on income. How hard it is to get income data from tax.
But we have to admit that in China there is about they said it's about 5 trillion renminbi of green income. It's a huge number, and this so
this is like off the books income kind of.
Yeah, off the book income, and there is kind of 5 trillion renminbi, and for all of this number kind of income, where kind of people think like 2/3 of them really get to the top 10% of the family. But probably it's very difficult for them to really get it out of this calculation. So I guess that's the reason they really feel like...
Well, if we take your argument as given, starting from there, if that's the truth, that probably means that if they really disclose everything, then the number could be even worse.
Right. So let's talk about, is there a kind of something that you could look at to see, kind of like the concrete like manifestation of this income gap?
No, I guess it's definitely, we truly believe it should be at least 0.6. Mm-hmm. So it should be at the level where it's the highest in the world. And, but it's kind of worse than that because of the green income in China. It's so huge, 5 trillion. Yeah, which is about close to $1 trillion US dollar.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess at what you're talking about, that is the difficulty, the challenges posed to us when it comes to the calculation part of it. The Lorentz curve is not so easy. For me, it's hard to explain. For those people doing the number crunching, it's even harder. I agree with that. But if you used foreign exchange PPP, purchasing power parity example, it's hard to compare currencies purchasing power. So the economists came up with the idea of Big Mac index. That is, they're looking at the Big Mac's price in each country, and then they back out purchasing power. So in China, okay, let's just take it as a starting point. It's hard, if you believe the official version of the story, it's hard to get wealth data. Okay, let's look at China's ownership of housing data. How many houses are under each person's name? And if you look at this data, you'll find that the pattern fits with our perception very well. That is, actually, there are government officials and the people with the privileges in society who own dozens of houses, not just one, 2, 3.
There was just a case recently where in Zhengzhou they busted an official for owning like several dozen houses.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But this is something recently pump up on the web a lot. They call it kind of house uncle, house aunt, and house sister. Basically, they found a lot of people, they own like 20, 30 houses. The value of a house sometimes can go to hundreds of millions.
At the same time, you look at migrant labor, people who are trying to get the citizenship in the city as an urban dweller. They own no houses at all.
Well, you can't buy property.
No, they cannot buy property, and official statistics show that. I'm quoting from the Government Statistics Bureau. Among the migrant labor who are residing in the city temporarily, only up to 0.6% of them have purchased houses. So in sharp contrast to what we're witnessing among the general leadership.
But this other kind of good point is in China, if Chinese government claim they